All right, what is up, everybody? How are we doing? Man, this is so fun. It's good to go live with you guys. We're gonna do a little mixing tutorial, kind of talk about balancing a mix and the way to approach the relationships between the different instruments in your mix. So I think it's gonna be really fun. I'm looking forward to it. Drop a hello in the chat. Let me know where you're from if you're watching. I do know. So I just found out a few minutes ago. Apparently, like Instagram and Facebook are having some issues, so we'll see how many people are able to jump on here. Obviously, that's one of the big ways that we communicate with people and get the word out there when we're doing something live like this. So we'll see what happens. This may be something that more people go back and watch later. But either way, it's gonna be a really good, fun time, and I'm excited to get to hang out with you guys. All right, let's jump over here. So I'm in Pro Tools right now, and that's because I've got basically a virtual sound check going. Got some tracks recorded off of my console from just a couple Sundays ago, and wanted to kind of demo with this. I think it's a really good way to sort of demonstrate what's going on and show you some of these concepts and principles in a way that's a little more controlled than if I were to actually do it on a like a live console. But the important thing is that the principles here are exactly the same. You'll see me using a lot of this Pro Q3 plugin. It's going to be an equalizer. It's just like what you got on your console. If you got a digital console or an analog console, you got a 4-band EQ. It's same deal. Just nice and easy to look at here. So I like using that just for demo purposes. But anyway, if you're unfamiliar with seeing stuff in a digital audio workstation like this, don't worry about it. This is going to apply equally to the live world, just like it does kind of in a third-party software over here. So we're going to talk about today how to achieve volume balance in your mix. And I think this is one of the big things that people get hung up on when they start mixing. They start going right for processing, lots of EQ, compression, effects, and they neglect volume balance. And I'm here to tell you today that volume might be the most crucial thing. Actually, not even might be. It is the most crucial thing that you can do to improve your mix, is getting your volume balance correct. When we consult with churches and stuff, one of the big things we'll get is like, man, I just can't get my mix to come together. I'm trying all this stuff, got this crazy, plug-in signal chain waves going or whatever, and it just doesn't sound good. And the main thing that's ends up being off with it is actually just their volume relationship between different instruments. So I'm gonna show you how I approach that, and hopefully that can inform some of how you approach that as well. So let's kind of jump in here. Let's see where we're starting from. So let's jump in here, get my in-ear back in. Okay, so it's kind of all over the place, right? So this is with all the faders at 0, everything kind of just coming in as it was recorded off the console. And yeah, it sounds like a mess. It sounds like a very, amateur mix if I were to hear this. So let's talk about, without using any EQ, any compression, any crazy fancy stuff, let's talk about how to get this mix to a place where it actually sounds like something you would want to listen to. So I'm gonna take you through that, and I'm gonna start where I tend to enjoy starting, which is with drums, and kind of walk you through the kit, and then I'll show you what we have to work with and how I would approach balancing it. So first, you ungroup these. So we've got 2 kick mics. We have a kick in and a kick out. Kick in was a Beta 91, sounds like this. So it's real tight, it's punchy, just what you'd expect from a kick in mic. Kick out was an Audix D6. You could probably tell that just from listening to it. It's super scoop sounding. It already kind of almost has some EQ applied from the microphone itself. Okay, there's our snare mic. That's the Lawton Audio snare mic, which sounds really fantastic. I've also got their tom mics, which sound incredible. Let's check out bottom snare. So that's just the 57. Nothing crazy going on there. Okay, and those are all of those Lawton Audio tom mics. Then we have some of the Warm Audio. It's like the AKG C414 clone on this. Let's check out what that sounds like. Tight. Those sound really, really good. I'm like so impressed by how good those sound. They're a relatively cheap mic. To me, they almost sound better than the actual C414 in a lot of ways. They're a little more smooth on the top end. Oh, Travis Ball is here. He's a fantastic mixer. Hey, what's up, man? All right, got some cool people on here already. It's gonna be so fun. So let's start to balance this. Let's kind of start with the relationship between our kick mics and our snare mics. Obviously, we've got two microphones on each of these sources. So we have to decide like how do those relate to each other, and then how do those two instruments, the kick and the snare, relate to each other. So let's kind of go ahead. I'll show you what I usually do. So I'm gonna leave this kick out mic. It's kind of going to be like my primary mic. I'm going to leave it at like -5. And I'm going to blend in the kick in to get a little more punch, kind of get it where I feel like it's sounding like it has some real like impact and life to the kick. Let's hear that. Cool. I think that sounds pretty good. You can see they're close, like about 5 dB off from the kick in mic to the kick out mic. Sweet. Let's go ahead and check out snare top. This one, I'll usually keep my snare top right around 0, right around unity on the fader. That tends to work good for me. So the big thing I'm listening for here is how's the kick gonna blend with the snare, and then how does the snare bottom mic meld with the snare top mic to get a cohesive snare drum sound. Let's blend that in. Cool, that's feeling good. So one thing I'll say about this is you'll notice that so far we've only got one thing that's up at unity, that's the snare. You'll see as we go through this that I'm not trying to push stuff over unity unless it's like, very circumstantial. I've got a very quiet vocalist on, something where I really need to push them and hear them in like a particular moment or whatever. But as a general rule, if I was kind of setting this up like a template, I would not have anything going like no fader above 0, just to give myself some room, just to kind of like keep it right there in that like highest resolution area of the fader. That's kind of where I want stuff to live. So let's move on to toms. I think he's got some good tom stuff going on here. Actually, before we even do that, let's mix in overheads. I really like to hear that. And let's kind of hear how that plays with everything else. Yeah, that's awesome. I love you can hear the drummer sing. It's great. So the way that I like to approach overheads is like maybe a little bit different. Some people approach it really as essentially like cymbal mics. Basically, it's kind of like they're there just to pick up cymbals. You'll see some guys like kind of angle them a little bit, so it kind of like minimizes the sound of the drums in the like the actual drum shells in the overheads, and you're getting mostly cymbals. That's not really what I like to do. I like to think of that as kind of what glues everything together with the drum kit, makes it sound like a full kit, like a single instrument. So for me, the overheads, I wanted to capture like a full picture of everything that's going on. So I want to get snare, I want to get toms, obviously want to get cymbals, I want to even like have a little bit of kick in there, just to get it where everything kind of feels like a complete picture of the drums as their own instrument. And speaking of that, let's go ahead and mix toms back in. I can already tell you they'll probably be somewhere around here. Let's see if I kind of get this right. Usually, I find smaller toms to be a little bit louder, so I'll kind of do this where it's like, like in this instance, I have 3 toms, so it'll kind of go upward in volume, and those should come through fairly evenly. This is like perceived volume. Let's check out how this sounds. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so had a comment on here in the chat. How do you get clarity in a mix? I always struggle. I mean, where can I hear each instrument in their own space? So this is perfect for you. This is exactly what we're talking about. So one of the biggest things I think that brings clarity to a mix is keeping like making room for stuff in balance, like both in volume and in space. So starting with this, I'm gonna go ahead and like pan these toms. And I'll go fairly hard with them. I'm not going to go like, full left or right with any of them, but you can see right here, I'm really spreading those out. And that's going to even like start to build this sense of width and space within the mix. And think about like what happens if you don't do that, right? So like, let's say you've got a part where like he's really going on toms, like he is here. That's going to step all over like your vocals, all that stuff that like needs to live in the middle of the mix in order to be heard. You don't want so many things in there that it gets confusing and cluttered within that space. You want to leave room, and the best way is to like spread that out and make room for those things that need to live in the middle. So, okay, now the next part here, let's go ahead. We had synth bass on this track. Let's pop this in. Actually, maybe even like jump over to like a bigger part of the song. Let's kind of hear what's going on here. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that synth bass is fat. That's amazing. I love that. So I might do some EQ work on that at some point, but for now, I think that's a good level. And the main thing I'm looking for there is I want the bass and the kick drum to support and reinforce each other. That's the important thing there. I don't want them to step on each other. I want them to work together, like in concert, to provide like a nice stable low end for the mix. Now, let's jump in here. Specifically, let's deal with guitars next, I think. We had just one guitar on this and a keyboard. So this is like a really like bare bones, very, very representative, like maybe a typical church. Nothing too crazy going on here. We don't have like a ton of people on stage or anything for this one. Let's listen to guitar first. Let's kind of blend that in. Okay, so right here, if you're listening, especially on headphones, you'll start to hear as we introduce these sort of instruments that take up a chunk of the mid-range of the mix. Like I'm talking maybe, let's say like 300 hertz up to like 5 kilohertz. You're gonna start hearing a phenomenon called masking. And masking basically means with 2 instruments or more will overlap in the same frequency space together, and they'll start to like kind of cover each other up. So in this instance, like as soon as I brought in that guitar, I noticed like, oh, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing kind of the mid-range of my drums, because both those things, even though they don't seem very related, like you might think about this like from electric guitar to piano is kind of like an obvious one, but it happens across every instrument. Whenever something is like kind of in the same space as something else, you're going to need to figure out a way to make them live and work together. So listen to kind of how, as I pull this up, you'll just start to lose definition in the drums, and even like kind of the mid-range of the bass as well. Let's check this out. So it's like all of a sudden as I bring that up, I lose like the body of the cymbals. I even lose like some of the impact and like mid-range punch of the snare. But let's worry about that more with EQ. So this will be, I'm just going to kind of tuck this in to where I feel like is appropriate for right now. Probably about here. Not going to go crazy with it. Everything will get more definition, especially as we introduce some EQ into it. Let's go ahead and bring in piano. And maybe some acoustic guitar as well. Okay, I'm really liking how that feels, and I think obviously we are hearing some of that masking that's happening, but it's like it's not that bad, right? Like if I heard this, I'm like, okay, that's a fairly like reasonable instrumental balance there. Okay, the next thing we're gonna bring in is gonna be tracks. So we've got some perk tracks, some like synth keys tracks, guitar tracks, and some background vocal. I don't know if we have background vocals in this one, but let's see what we've got. I've got these all grouped together. I'll keep tracks roughly at the same level. They're already kind of mixed themselves, so their level relative to each other, I generally find I don't mess with too much, but we'll see what happens. Cool. Okay, I think that's feeling really good. So now we've kind of worked our way through sort of like the bulk of our instruments here, and now we're gonna be on to vocals. So here's where kind of this like real like volume relationship comes into play here, because you'll notice what I've done, like there's even sort of a pattern here, right, of like my snare is kind of that loudest thing, it's up at 0, everything else is sort of below that for right now. And you'll notice that a lot of these instruments, kind of those like mid-range instruments like, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, piano, tracks, they're all kind of around this like -10 area on the fader. That's really a lot of times where I'll live with those, assuming everything is gain staged correctly. And to me, that just kind of creates a good balance between everything, and I think it tends to work really well. So now, that also means I have plenty of room to place my vocalists without having to like, crank them super loud, or like even without EQ, we're gonna have room to like get our vocals in the mix and not like run out of headroom on that. So let's see, I don't even actually remember who was leading this. Let's go ahead and just listen to our vocals for a minute. And these are all DPA capsules, like the 2028, something like that. The not crazy expensive one. They sound really good though. Let's go through these one by one, kind of hear what's going on. Praise the Father. Okay, so we got some harmony going there. Okay, I think she was leading. Let's hear what else we got. Praise the Father. Okay, we got a low male harmony. So, okay, here's where this starts to come in. I'm gonna start panning. So you can do this live. Don't be afraid to pan vocals live. It is okay for you to do this. Oops, I just didn't have my screen up. That's okay. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and start panning these vocals. Panning that, like the 2 male vocals like side to side. I think we have a couple female vocals as well. Praise the Father, praise the Son. Let's see. Praise the Father, praise the... Okay, we have a higher female vocal as well. Oh, that sounds really nice. Okay, let me see. See if I can remember. I think... Let's see, I think it was actually Annie leading this one. I think Katie was doubling on that. Still gonna pan. Let's see, I'll kind of pan them like I think they were on stage. Let's hear that blend together and see what we're working with. I will take heart in deserts and God. Well, that's not the right song, is it? We'll get to that one later, maybe. By his blood and in his name. For this gospel truth of all shall not kneel and shall not fade. By his blood and in his Okay, cool. So yeah, I think Katie was leading this. She's a pretty quiet vocalist. So this is a good example of kind of how to work with that in what could be a dense mix. All right. So I'll have a tendency to kind of stagger the way I balance vocals, just depending on how loud the singer is. So like John, who's on that kind of, I guess kind of like the mid male harmony, he is a loud vocalist. You notice I've got him down a little bit less than say Patrick, who's the other male vocalist, who does not sing quite as loud. So you kind of have to stagger people like that to get them kind of in the ballpark of where you want them to live in comparison to each other to support the whole mix. So that's kind of the reason why, like, I'm not going to say something like, oh yeah, keep all my background vocals at -5 or -10 or whatever. It just kind of depends on how loud the person is. And a lot of that we may balance that out processing as well. But for right now, let's keep it like this just to kind of maintain a relative volume to each other. Okay, so I think that's a pretty good spot. Let's listen through a couple spots in this song.
To the other side, knowing this was our salvation, Jesus for our sake.
I'm honestly not 100% sure who is leading this. We have two strong vocalists who are both singing melody on that. Okay, we'll figure it out. It's honestly not super important for this as we get into more of this stuff. So, oh man, we got Isaac from Nigeria on. That's awesome. What's up, Isaac? Good to see ya. So cool. We have like people from all around the world here. Okay, sweet. So I think that's a decent starting point. We also have some room mics. We may get to those. We may not. We'll see. But for right now, I'm going to keep them down. Now, you will notice that I've got things routed here. If you're familiar with Pro Tools, this is my kind of my output, like my group routing. So basically, all my drums are routed to a drum bus that's over here, drum group. My instruments are all routed through a band bus, band group, and then vocals are all routed through a vocal group. So we're going to do just like the tiniest bit of work on these groups first. And this will kind of demonstrate how to like get these different instrument groups to fit together a little bit better. So I'm just going to open up Pro Q right here. Let's make it nice and big. How about that? Let's see, that is very large. Let's go to like 250. There we go. That's nice. Okay, sweet. So this is going to be on our drum group. And so keep in mind, this is before any kind of like, compression, anything going on, no EQ even like on the individual channels. This is just at the group. So let's see what we can do with this. Let's see how cool we can make it sound. I'm going to solo the drums and let's see what's going on. Cool. Okay, so already kind of getting just a little bit of polish on there. Like, I'm boosting around 3 dB here on the lows and the highs, and just a little like bump right here where I get to see the snare was hitting. Let's kind of play around with these, see what we want to do with that. Cool. Okay, so now we're cleaning stuff up just a little bit as well. So I've got kind of like right around 1K. I'm gonna dip it by, like not even 2 dB. Like, so this is very, very subtle what we're talking about here. And yeah, it's just, just a little bit of polish across that drum buzz. All right, let's do the same thing. Actually, let's Let's hear that on and off really quick first. So okay, I'm gonna start it off, then engage it. So notice this little bypass button is yellow or kind of orange. So when that is like that, that means that it's bypassed. And then when it's kind of gray like that, it means it's engaged. So let's hear it bypassed. And engaged. Bypassed. Engaged. Like it's honestly kind of crazy how much that, just, I mean, tiny, 4 EQ moves did to that with nothing else, like nothing else happening on the mix. Let's do the same thing with our band group. So I'm gonna leave drums in. I'm gonna mute vocals just because I don't want to deal with those quite yet. I shall mute that like at the vocal group right here. Let's hear what everything else is doing together. Let's see, 1 sec. Okay, hang on. You know what? Let me switch the routing here. I was like, I'm seeing drums. I don't want to see drums. My drum bus is routed to my band bus. Sometimes I'll do that, sometimes I don't. So in this case, it's going like the drums, the rest of the band, and the vocals are all going independently to my mix bus. Mix bus does not have anything on it. EQ is flat for right now. It does have a limiter just to keep it from clipping for the stream. But nothing actually like happening there. Okay, so now let's look at this. Okay, so you can see kind of a similar pattern going on here where I'm having this tendency to boost some low end, boost some top end, cut a little bit of mids. The reason we're cutting mids is going to become apparent as we get into vocals here in a second. I'm trying to make room for vocals to live in this mid range. I'm trying to take out anything that seems like it's too much over there. So that's kind of the reason we're doing that. Let's jump over to our vocal group and we'll hear that just on its own for a second. I think it'll be interesting to kind of get a feel for how that sounds.
Praise the Spirit, 3 and 1.
So like just not bad right off the bat. That just kind of shows you what a, good microphone capsule being held properly, like up to their mouths, everyone knowing their parts, singing together. It's really not going to take much to make that sound good. So the two things that I heard right off the bat, I know that it needs some more top end in. I know it's sounding a little bit dull right now. And I also think there's some stuff in this mid range that's going to get a little stuffy when they're all singing together. And we're going to put a low cut filter in here just to get out some low like stage noise and stuff that just, doesn't need to be there. Let's check out what this does.
Praise the Spirit, 3 and 1.
So mid-range stuff I'm kind of hearing around here. Let's kind of zone in on some of that, see what we're getting.
Praise the Spirit, 3.
So see how that kind of feels like muddy, stuffy as I start to like boost that a bunch? We're going to cut that just a little bit, like not a ton. So we're going to end up with something like this.
Praise the Spirit,
let's bypass that.
3 and 1.
And engage.
God of glory, majesty.
Tight. That sounds awesome. Okay, so now let's pull all of our instruments back together and hear it all with these EQs going. Oh, it'd be cool. Let's pull all these open at once. See if we can get these side by side. I think that'd be fun to look at. I have to make it small to see it all. Okay, yeah. Okay, so we've got our vocals, our drums over here, and then kind of fit all this together. All right, so we've got our instrument group down here, our drum group right here, and our vocal group right here. Let's go ahead and listen and see what this all sounds like together.
Praise the Spirit, three and one, God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings.
Yeah, I mean that's actually sounding pretty good. I've heard live streams sound worse than that. Okay, so this is with literally 3 equalizers on the entire mix and a good volume balance. So I cannot stress this enough. This would not sound like this if our volume was not balanced appropriately. That's like really the key to this whole thing, is getting your volume balance correct across all your different groups and your different instruments in relation to one another. So it won't work if you don't have your volume locked in first. There's no amount of EQ. And actually, like, if it's not balanced appropriately, your EQ and your compression, your effects, all that other fun stuff is actually going to work against you, because you're going to be trying to compensate for something that should be corrected with volume by using a different tool, by using the wrong tool. You're trying to, correct for a volume imbalance by using compression, and that just is never going to work the way you want it to. Okay, so let's X out of this. Let's see how adding effects into this is going to affect things. Okay, so I'm going to do this just so quick and dirty. We're going to do 3 reverbs next. Let's actually do, let's make it so easy. Let's go Valhalla vintage verb on everything. So this, it's a great reverb. It's nothing magical. Cannot stress that enough. There's no, this is not some super crazy thing where it's this reverb makes everything sound so much better. It's a very good sounding reverb. It's not anything insane. So I'm going to go, let's do this let's do a smooth plate on the drums. And honestly, I'm I'm inserting this at the group. So I'm not even putting it on an aux or anything. It's just, like I said, a very just down and dirty way to do this. I'm just going to move this mix until I hear something that I like. Yeah. That sounds super cool. That's adding some depth to it. I know we're talking, we had some questions about how do you get depth into a mix. This is one of the ways. So reverb on these things is going to take it from kind of a flat sounding mix into a more lively and deep sounding mix. Okay, you notice I didn't even touch any of the settings. It's literally just left it as is. I've actually pulled this pre-delay down a little bit. Let's see how that sounds. Like it. Okay, let's go ahead and move this over to our instrument group. We'll hear that on its own just to see what it sounds like. Now with this, I like something that's I kind of call a glue verb. Let's do something just like a room or a plate. I think is going to be good for this. I'll go with room. Make the time shorter, probably 1 second kind of thing. Don't really need a pre-delay on that. Let's start mixing this in. So you can kind of hear what this reverb sounds like. It honestly sounds a lot like what I might be getting from my room mics, and we'll deal with those here in a minute. I'm gonna back this back down to just a little bit. Yeah, cool. That's all we need on that. All right, let's do the same thing, same plugin onto our vocals. And for this one, let's go, man, dirty plate sounds fun. I like something kind of long. Who knows, maybe even sanctuary. Maybe that sounds cool. I'll do a longer reverb on this. So we'll go maybe 4 seconds. Let's hear that by itself.
Praise
Yeah, I like that. It's cool. It sounds vibey. Um, let's hear all that together, see where we're at, and then I can bypass all these. Actually, let's start with them bypass. I'll turn them off up here, and let's see what they sound like. I'll turn them on drums, kind of this glue verb for all the instruments, and then my vocal verb. Let's hear what it does. So super dry. Ah, okay, so it was Katie leaning in. All right, we'll switch over to her. Okay, I think that sounds super good. And it's like, again, we're using a total of 6 processors on this whole mix right now. We're getting something that sounds pretty darn good. Let's move over to our mix bus. So you'll notice, like, yeah, so nothing on the individual channels at all right now. So I've got another instance of our EQ over here on our master. Let's go ahead and see. Let's make that nice and big so we can see it. Let's see where we're at here. Okay, now you'll notice just by kind of looking at this, there's nothing like, there's no frequency range where I'm seeing anything jump out in an unusual way. Everything looks kind of balanced. Like, obviously, you know, it's like when the kick hits, you see a bump in the low end. You know, snare hits, you'll see stuff down here. When they sing, you'll see some stuff pop up in the mid-range. But overall, it's like pretty even across the board. So what that means is that I don't have to use this EQ necessarily for correction. I can use this to like augment my sound and just like make it sound cool, make it sound vibey. So that's what we're gonna do. Let's go ahead. I think it could stand to be a hair brighter. Especially if this were a live stream mix. I'm kind of pretending like this is a streaming mix, but this is going to apply equally for in-house as well. Let's go ahead and just see if we brighten it up just a hair, what'll happen. And like that was almost too much. Or as I moved it up a little bit, you'd hear it kind of got a little too aggressive. So we're keeping that somewhere down here. Let's keep going. Yeah, there we go. Just sweetening it up a little bit, just making it feel good. Okay, so really quickly, I want to try this. Let me see if I can do this really quick. I want to compare where we started versus where we're at now. So I'm going to go ahead and disable any of our processing here. And then, let's see, hopefully this doesn't mess stuff up. I'm going to highlight all my tracks. I'm going to try to reset everything. Ah, yeah, there we go. Okay, let's hear. So this is where we started. Okay, so yeah, just a mess. Let me hit undo. There we go. And here's where we've ended up. Cool. Okay, so you'll notice obviously it's a little bit quieter, right? So that's because we've moved volume down to achieve this balance, and before it was, you know, everything blasting with all our faders right at 0. So clearly we're gonna do some work to make our volume kind of back up to where it needs to be, especially like if this were a stream. But man, like the clarity we've achieved just through literally 4 EQs if you count the master, is pretty incredible, and literally nothing on the channels. So let's go ahead. We'll do like one fun thing here. We're going to do, let's do, where to go? Our SSL comp. This is just a classic from Waves. Everybody likes this. I'm going to turn this, let's hear. I tend to favor this like 10 millisecond attack in either the 0.1 or the auto release. Let's kind of hear what happens. Right, I'm putting this on the master. This could be something that I would put onto a group level as well. If I want to get my drums punchy, maybe we'll do that in a minute, but let's go ahead and just do it on the master first, see what it does.
Praise the Spirit, three in one, God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Morning that you rose, all of heaven held its breath.
Cool. Okay, I'm feeling good on that. I made a slight EQ adjustment just as I was listening to those vocals, just cutting out a little more of that kind of mid-rangey honkiness. But yeah, so that compressor just tightened stuff up. Let's try the auto release too. I'm curious to see which one sounds better.
Praise the Spirit, three in one, God of glory, majesty.
Yeah, I think I like the auto better. That sounds fine. Okay, cool. So now we're kind of getting back up to level here. And, maybe, to finish it off, let's do this. Let's do a couple things really quick. First, let's start just a quick, just another SSL. Actually, let's do something fun. Let's use the API 2500 as our drum compressor. So on this guy, let's see what I want to do here. I think I want to do somewhere in the neighborhood of, it's like slow attack. This is on the whole bus, right? So all the drums are kind of getting this. We're going to be a little more conservative with our settings here. And let's go, man, maybe we'll see about the release here in a second. Let's see what this does.
Praise the
And I just realized you guys couldn't see my screen during that. That was my bad, guys. Live streaming, sometimes stuff happens. All right, so just to recap, so these are my settings right here on that SSL compressor. Actually, honestly, that may have been good. You guys couldn't see what I was doing. You just had to hear it. But to recap, we've got the SSL compressor. It's on the 10 attack time and the auto release. And then I just put on this API 2500 on the drum bus before the reverb. That's important. So we've got like the attack set on 30 milliseconds, ratio 3:1. We've got a release set, it's like 0.21 seconds, something like that. And I'll show you kind of what we're getting there. So this is another really good indicator that our balance is solid. So if we had, like, let's say we're looking at our compressor, I'll just give you an example here, and our snare was like way up here where it's way too loud, and we see this happening on the compressor. So like the snare is triggering that bus compressor way more than anything else is. That's not what we want. Like we're seeing very similar levels of compression for like kick and snare. Toms are maybe a hair less, but it's all like in the same ballpark. The compressor's not working super hard on any one component of our drum kit. That's really, really important. Let's hear that with everything else.
praise the Spirit, three in one, God of glory, majesty, praise forever to the King of Kings. Morning that you rose, all of heaven held its.
Yeah, I think that's sounding really cool. I'm going to do one more thing kind of before we wrap this up. I want to bring in these room mics. So this is a pair of the Lawton Audio LA120s. They're kind of my favorite room mic right now. You'll pretty quickly see why. They just sound really, really good. Let's solo them and listen to them just on their own.
Praise the Spirit,
Yeah, so cool. It's like you can hear people singing, you can hear, some of the PA in the room. It kind of fills out that space really, really nicely. And again, that is with no EQ at all. So this will be the one channel where I am going to put on an EQ on the individual channel. And the reason for that is because I want to do something maybe a little bit drastic. There we go. I'm going to cut out a lot of low end from this. So let's kind of listen and see where we go with that. Yeah, so just all that stuff down here, I don't need that on room mics. That's already being covered by the actual, instrument mics, like our kick, our bass DI, everything that's supporting everything that low end. I don't want that to conflict and potentially run into some weird like masking issues with that. So let's blend that in. Let's see how it sounds. So you can hear us sort of start to overtake the mix. This is something that I hear a lot of times on church live streams is like, we love our room mics, they sound great, but when you push them too far, it'll start to actually overtake the console or the direct inputs from the band. Like your actual mix will kind of be overtaken by the mix of the room mics. So we want to tuck it below that, not a ton, but like we don't want to be present in our mix, but we don't need them to overtake our mix, right? So I think that's probably a good level, kind of like around -10 for that. Let's give it one more listen, maybe listen to a couple other parts of the song here. Okay, so actually that was a perfect example of kind of why we also do want to do individual channel processing. It's like when she kind of did that little ad lib there, it got really loud. Like she kind of went above where she had previously been at in her like average volume level. And so like a compressor on that individual channel would catch that and not let that jump out as much. So obviously, we're going through this like super minimalist mix right now. We literally have 5 EQs, 3 verbs, and a couple compressors. And I mean, to be honest, you could do this with like one reverb. But anyway, the point is, that's kind of the stuff that I go to the individual channel level for, is to like really dial in those things that like you can't really address that at the group level. I can't like reduce the volume of one vocalist if she gets too loud at the group. Like that's already kind of set in stone. So I want to address that kind of stuff at the channel level. And by getting our volume balance correct, that will allow us to do that a lot more effectively and not have to work so hard with all of our other processing to make that happen. So guys, I hope that was really fun. This is great for me. I really enjoyed doing this. And I hope you guys maybe are inspired to approach your processing a little bit differently. Like, since our room mics, but maybe kind of look at your EQs, look at your approach to mixing these different groups. Like check out, just like one more time, take some screenshots of like what I've got on these groups right here, and maybe try this next time you mix, where you approach that a little bit differently in terms of like moving from everything happening at the channel level to maybe doing some group processing and getting stuff lined up that way. I think it's probably gonna really help you guys, I think. And the key of it all, like the foundation of it all, is going to be your volume balance. So just make sure that you nail that, and you'll be in a really good spot with the rest of it. Like, I can't even explain how much easier it makes it when you've got that initial volume balance correct. So this Sunday, or maybe you're mixing tonight, I'm going to be mixing tonight for a Wednesday night service. And, when I approach it, this is how I do it. So I'm going to get that volume balance first. I encourage you to do that same thing. So until then, if you want to learn more, we have in-depth courses, all that kind of stuff. If you like the way I teach, you can get all those at worshipsoundguy.com. You can also join our insiders group at worshipsoundguy.com/insiders. We do streams like this, all kinds of training. You can meet a bunch of other audio techs from all around the world. It's a really good time. So anyway, that said, I hope you learned something from this. I'll definitely let you guys know we're doing a stream again like this. It'll probably be a more consistent thing from here on out. So until then, happy mixing.